This is the story of 4 lionesses who left their natal pride to survive. And it's also a story of rejection, hope and hardship. But most of all, it's a story of success and great legacy, which started more than 1.5 decades ago. The Tsalala pride was a small pride of 3 lionesses. One of them was called Bibi and the other 2 were her daughters. When the 6 powerful Mapogo came into their territory and killed their pride male, chaos erupted. The Mapogo killed 8 of their cubs and they were forced to go on the run. Despite the pressure, they managed to keep 2 cubs alive, and after the youngsters have left the pride, they were ready to mate again, and eventually accepted the 6 Mapogo as their pride males. At the time, the Mapogo were in the midst of conquering one territory after another. Furthermore, they had responsibilities in the west to protect the Othawa pride and their cubs. The first generation of Tsalala Mapogo cubs didn't make it, hence why mating started all over again. While their 4 brothers returned to the west, the 2 youngest, Mr. T and Kinky Tail, stayed and became the sole protectors of the Tsalala pride. Early 2009, the lionesses were pregnant again and gave birth to 8 cubs. Although you can't be 100% sure, it's widely accepted that Mr. T and Kinky Tail were the fathers. Amongst these cubs were 4 females, who would become the center of this story. Their childhood was rather uneventful, and Mr. T and Kinky Tail did their best to fulfill their roles as responsible fathers. Under their protection, the cubs grew up to beautiful subadults. But by mid-2010, dramatic events evolved that would change their lives forever. 5 young males had entered their territory from the north and challenged their fathers. Mr. T and Kinky Tail, who had never lost a fight before, accepted. They caught one of the young intruders and injured him so badly that he would die a few hours later. The 4 brothers of the young male returned the same evening to get their vengeance. In that fateful night, the Tsalala cubs lost one of their fathers and Mr. T lost his brother. Alone, Mr. T had no chance to defend his territory any longer, hence why he reunited with his brothers in the west. The Tsalala pride also paid a heavy price when they lost 4 of their 8 subadults. The pride was a mess, and so Bibi made the decision to take the 4 survivors and go on the run with them. In the meantime, Bibi's daughters distracted the Majingilane, who were the new rulers of their territory. 2 of the young lionesses were Bibi's own daughters, and she was a grandmother to the other 2. She taught them everything to survive, and by mid-2011 they had evolved into superb hunters. While the young lionesses were on a good path to independence, Bibi's older daughters had become mothers again. The first attempt to rejoin the pride was made in September 2011, but this turned out to be a disaster. A few days before the reunion attempt, Bibi's older daughters had lost 2 cubs in a buffalo hunt, which might have played a hand into the events that were about to unfold. While Bibi was welcomed, the young lionesses were met with aggression. And even though they showed submissive behavior, they got attacked. Bibi actually had to intervene to save one of the young lionesses, which left one of her older daughters with a bloody ear. Bibi and the young lionesses retreated to give it another try a couple of months later. Bibi became the most recognizable lioness in Sabi Sand after she had lost her tail caused by a hyena attack. One of her older daughters would suffer the same fate in November 2011, and the Tsalala pride would end up with not only one, but two tailless lionesses. Bibi, who had gone through the same painful experience, surprisingly rejoined her older daughters, and from there on only occasionally met up with the Tsalala four. The young lionesses, who were almost 3 years old by now, were left to fend for themselves. The young Styx male, who also got expelled from his pride due to the arrival of the Majingilane, spent about 4 weeks with the young lionesses before he moved on. In 2012, the Majingilane, who had killed one of their fathers and made them leave in the first place, developed a high interest in the Tsalala four. But when Bibi was around, they weren't allowed to come too close. In July 2012, the two Tsalala groups met up again, with Bibi trying to be the peacemaker. However, her older daughter, the new tailless lioness, was in no mood to play nice and chased one of the Tsalala four. When she returned, she found the other three standing like a wall, shielding Bibi from her. Bibi got up and made her way over, trying to calm things down. But she quickly realized that this reunion also didn't go as planned. It wouldn't be the last time they would meet, but this was kinda nail in the coffin. From the perspective of the young lionesses, who got fully independent by now, the only bond they still had with their natal pride was Bibi. They moved on and the split became permanent. 3 months later, one of the young Tsalala four experienced her first estrus cycle and was seen mating with one of the Majingilane. Ironically, these were the males they had been running from for 1.5 years, but they were undoubtedly the undisputed kings of the area. When the first Majingilane cub was born in December 2012, it was about time to give the Tsalala four their own pride name. And that's when rangers named them the Mhangeni Pride. The first litter was a single female cub who would later be named Kambula Lioness K3. While her mother had chosen a den site up in the north, her 3 sisters had shifted a little further south into Singita and Londolozi. Only a couple of months later, the second litter was born. These 2 cubs would later be named Kambula Lionesses K2 and K6. 6 more cubs were born in June 2013, amongst them 3 females and 3 males. But the joy of having so many cubs on the reserve was soon followed by great sadness. On the 7th of August 2013, Bibi passed away on Marthley Pools, a place Bibi had visited countless times over the 15 years she had been living on Londolozi. The reason for her demise had been blamed on the 4 young lionesses who she had fought so hard for to protect them from the Majingilane. Apparently, 3 days prior to Bibi's passing, the Mhangeni lionesses had made a kudu kill, and when Bibi showed up, they didn't let her feed and gave her a beating. And with Bibi's passing, the last bond they had with their natal pride had been severed. Over the next 2 years, the Mhangeni cubs grew up to strong and healthy subadults. By 2015, they were the undisputed super pride, and they even grew in size when one of the young Spada males joined them for a short period of time. In 2015, the Mhangeni lionesses started to mate again with the Majingilane, which started a slow, gradual process of separation from the subadults. The subadults were doing exceptionally well, and photos like this, when the whole pride came together, became a rarity. The first litter of the second generation was born in December 2015. It was a litter of 2 cubs who would later be named Big Boy and his sister. 2 males and 2 female cubs were born in April 2016, followed by 6 male cubs born in May and July. At the time, the Mhangeni youngsters were over 3 years old and fully independent. The young lionesses spent most of their time with their brothers, and they formed a formidable hunting unit. Their alliance got even stronger when they bonded with the young Talamati male. The 4 males formed a strong coalition, but they were forced to leave the area when their sisters attracted males left and right. Numerous coalitions like the Matimba and the Matsipiri males tried to take over the young lionesses, which made a reunion with their mothers impossible. The Mhangeni lionesses had 12 cubs to protect, and as a consequence they moved further west to avoid the drama. By late 2016 it was clear that their older daughters would form their own pride, and so they were called Kambula in Malamala and in Sevu Pride in Londolozi. Due to the heavy competition of numerous coalitions, the Mhangeni lionesses and their 12 cubs had moved into Singita. The Majingilane also had stopped patrolling the eastern part of their territory and were happy with the 2 prides they still had under their control. In addition to that, the coalition had lost one of its members when the Hipska male passed away due to loss of condition caused by sickness and an injury he had suffered a couple of years prior. The lionesses were excellent buffalo hunters, and as long as there was enough buffalo around, they were able to feed their 12 growing cubs. In 2017 was the year after a devastating drought, which had a great impact on the buffalo population. The Mhangeni pride was constantly on the move to find their preferred prey, which hadn't been easy back in 2017. The diminished buffalo population had also affected the males, who were forced to rely more and more on the lionesses to bring down big antelopes and zebra. With all cubs passing the 1-year mark, the pressure to make big kills was growing. And even when they made a large kill, it didn't last very long, especially when the males were in attendance. Sometimes even the lionesses nagged on the bones, which usually were reserved for the cubs. This led to hard times when the entire pride looked quite lean, even though they had just finished a decent-sized kill. By the end of 2017, half of the cubs were almost 2 years old. They weren't sufficient hunters yet, but they had the appetite of an adult. The lionesses had to make large kills at least 2 to 3 times a week just to sustain condition. And on top of all these challenges the lionesses were confronted with came another. The Birmingham males were pushing west, invading Majingilane territory. All these factors would contribute to the biggest tragedy that would unfold in 2018. The new year started relatively calm. But it came out of the blue when one of the lionesses was seen mating with the Majingilane when the oldest cubs were just over 2 years old. And just a few weeks later, the Birmingham males put pressure on them and 2 lionesses tried to distract them. This is not unheard of when lionesses offer themselves just to lure the males away from the pride. At this point, the mothers of the 6 youngest were still with the subadults. Their fathers were also close by, and up until January they were still in really good nick. No one would have guessed at the time how fast their end would come. The first to go would be the golden mane Majingilane male. He died early 2017 after he suffered a fatal hunting injury. Shortly after, his 2 brothers would follow due to old age. By the end of February, there was only 1 adult lioness to take care of the subadults. She did her best to prepare them for the harsh life in the bush. It may have been a hunting accident that took her life. We can't say for sure, but the fact is she suddenly disappeared and was never seen again. From there on, the youngsters were on their own, desperately trying to survive. Half of them weren't even 2 years old, and with that they took an enormous risk to make a kill. Eventually they made their first buffalo kill, but this success sadly wasn't sustainable. All but 3 of the youngsters would be gone by the end of 2018. Some would die from hunting injuries, some from their compromised immune system, and some from hunger. The 3 youngsters that made it into the next year and beyond were Big Boy and his sister and another young lioness with the orange eyes. The 2 young lionesses returned to their natal pride and got accepted back into the family fold. Big Boy, on the other hand, had to live through hard times until he eventually got accepted by the Nkuhumas. When the Mhangeni lionesses started mating with the Birmingham males, they shifted their territory further east, which overlapped with the territory of their older daughters, the 6 Kambula lionesses. Trouble was in the making, and while mating with the Birmingham males, a Mhangeni lioness got cornered. She got really lucky that the males were there who intervened. They eventually got the situation under control and she got away with minor scratches. Mid-2018, 2 litters were born, sired by the Birmingham males. But for some strange reason, they never really took over the Mhangeni pride. Instead, the Birmingham males preferred to stay with the Kambulas. The power vacuum that had emerged due to the demise of the Majingilane was quickly filled by the Matimba males, who kicked the young Othawa male out of his pride. The youngster was only 3.5 years old, but he looked absolutely impressive and much older than that. It didn't take long until he came across a Mhangeni who was an estrus. He started to follow the pride, and despite 2 of the lionesses having young cubs, they didn't seem to mind that he tagged along. A 3rd litter was born in January 2019, although it's highly unlikely he may have thought that these cubs were his. He didn't kill the older cubs who were the offspring of the Birmingham males, but he didn't care for them either. In fact, the older cubs were looking very skinny, and by the beginning of March, 6 of them were gone. The only cub that would make it to adulthood was a female named Tinia, who would eventually form a very special bond with the Othawa male. In 2018, the territory of the Mhangeni pride shifted further south. The mother of the young cubs born in January didn't stay back and moved her den sites wherever the pride went next. We don't know what happened to them, but in June 2018 they were gone. Surprisingly, the Othawa male didn't mate with the lionesses who had lost their cubs, and he did not behave territorial at all. Despite his appearance, he was still very young. Instead, he bonded with the youngest member of the pride, the female cub named Tinia. They really enjoyed each other's presence, and it was heartwarming to see them interact. Almost a full year would pass until the Othawa male would become the dominant male of the Mhangeni pride. 5 cubs were born mid to late 2020, and becoming dominant gave him also a big boost of confidence. He became a leader at the age of 5, and he was undoubtedly the best-looking male in the entire Sabi Sand. By the beginning of 2021, all but one of the Mhangeni lionesses had given birth or were pregnant. This made the Othawa male venture further away from the pride, looking for mating opportunities. On one of his excursions he came across the Kambula lioness K6, who had no cubs and was a willing partner. He returned every month when she went into estrus. He announced his presence and gave away his position more than once. The Birmingham males were aware what was going on and replied to his roars, and it was only a matter of time until they would come to blows. In the meantime, the second batch of 7 cubs was born in early 2021. Everything looked great until it suddenly fell apart. As a single male, the Othawa male was also under pressure from neighboring coalitions. In their quest for territory, they came across the Mhangeni pride and killed some of the older cubs. But this was only the beginning of a downward spiral that would unfold. Early May, the Othawa male was moving again into Londolozi, looking for his girlfriend from the Kambula pride. This trip into enemy territory turned out to be his last. After he got chased by the Birminghams numerous times, this time he couldn't get away. Apparently, he walked into a trap and got killed by the Birminghams and members of the Kambula pride. When the Othawa male passed away, 8 of his cubs were still alive. The youngest lioness Tinia was on the verge of adulthood, and she was a great big sister to the little ones. But despite strong family bonds, the Mhangenis found themselves suddenly without protection. 2 young nomads took advantage of the fact that the roars of the dominant male weren't heard any longer. The lionesses fought bravely to protect their cubs, but as it happens so often, the youngest are the most vulnerable. And shortly after the Othawa male's passing, all but 2 cubs were gone. It was one of the little cubs and a yearling that were still alive. Both of them were female. The next time the Mhangenis would clash with other lions, they would turn the tables. The young Styx male who had partnered up with the Nkuhuma male died from severe blood loss. It turned out that he got bitten badly and one of his arteries got nicked. The Mhangeni lionesses were strongly committed to raise the 2 youngsters. It was quite interesting to see that, except for one young lioness, none of them was actively seeking out mating partners. Protected by 6 adults, the youngsters did very well. By the end of 2021, a new coalition was on the rise, establishing their territory in the western sector. The new males caused the Mhangeni pride to leave their territory, which led to a confrontation with the Kambula pride and the loss of the 18-month-old cub. The last survivor of the Othawa male's offspring was the 10-month-old cub, who got named Hope by rangers of Singita. The 3 Mapogo daughters were in the autumn of their lives, turning 13 years old in 2022. The 2 young lionesses born in 2016 were 6 years old and were yet to raise a litter. Tinia was 3.5 and she would experience her first estrus cycle soon. The entire pride was very protective and caring for the cub, determined to raise her to adulthood. Hope's mother was the old lioness called Supermom, and Tinia was her big sister. The old lioness, who got nicknamed Good Teeth, was the mother of the subadult who got killed in the clash with the Kambulas. Losing her cub brought her back into estrus, and in April she was seen mating with the Plainscamp males, and she continued to do so for the next 3 months. All the while the Mhangeni pride moved on, trying to put as much distance as they could between them and the Plainscamp males. This led to a stunning situation when the old lioness who had been mating was suddenly seen in the company of the young Tsalala lioness. Even more stunning than that, it looked like that the 2 lionesses had formed a bond. They were enjoying each other's company, even though they weren't aware that they were born into the same pride. Their companionship lasted for almost 3 months, until it was time for the old lioness to give birth. While Good Teeth was away, one of her sisters disappeared mid-July. She had been nicknamed Supermom, and she was the mother of Hope and Tinia. We don't know what happened to her, since she seemed to be fine the last time she was seen together with the pride. She had been called Supermom for a reason. Despite all odds, she had raised her daughter Tinia to adulthood, and she was about to do the same for Hope. Her legacy is extraordinary. She was also the mother of Kambula lioness K5, who blessed her with 2 grandchildren. Her youngest daughter Hope was now left in the care of her big sister Tinia and the others. But with new powers fighting over the western sector, it wasn't easy to keep the cub safe. They kept moving, trying to keep her out of harm's way, foremost from the Plainscamp coalition. By September, the Plainscamp males eventually had catched up with them. After a run-in with the males, they were split up into groups. Initially, Hope had been seen with the old lioness, but somehow they got separated again, and Hope was all by herself. 2 weeks later, 5 Mhangeni lionesses were found together on a water kill. But it wasn't Hope who had reunited with the pride. Instead, it was the old lioness Good Teeth who was back. But Hope was still alive and looking for a family. And then, after more than 2 weeks, she finally linked up with one of the lionesses. She was very thin, but otherwise she looked fine. By that point, the Plainscamp males had already gotten a firm grip on the Mhangeni pride, and they were not willing to let this opportunity pass. Hope was happy to be back with her family, but she didn't know that she was in great danger again. Tragically, the day would come until she couldn't escape anymore. Hope was the last survivor of the Othawa male's legacy. but sadly she became a victim of a takeover as so many before her. With hope being gone, the other lionesses also finally accepted the Plainscamp males, and even Tinia started mating with them. The old lioness Good Teeth, who had given birth by the end of September, sadly also lost her litter. But with the Plainscamp males in charge, the Mhangeni lionesses would have the chance to raise the new generation of cubs in a safe environment. The 3 young lionesses gave birth to 9 cubs in March 2023. The old lionesses, on the other hand, were 14 years old, but still in good nick. And one of them hadn't given up on having another litter. It was Good Teeth, who had spent 3 months with the Tsalala lioness. She kept mating until she was finally pregnant again. Early September, she introduced her 6-week-old boy to the pride. While the older cubs were already in the process of getting weaned, the little guy was still fully dependent on Mum's milk. He watched his older cousins play, and he even tried to join in. But they just saw him as a new toy, and that's when he got named number 10. Her sister, on the other hand, was happy to be the aunt of the new generation. In lion society, it can be tough to be the youngest. The older cubs are stronger and they muscle their way in to get a shot from the milk bar. Suckling in peace is rarely a given, and due to his mum's age, there was concern that she could have trouble producing enough milk for him. Every time the Mhangeni pride was seen, there was an instant lookout for number 10, but obviously his mum took good care of him, and he made it through the first difficult months of his life. In 2024, the Mhangeni queens turned 15 years old. And despite all the losses they had suffered throughout the years, they were now proud matriarchs of a large pride. But when the pride had faced a period of food shortage earlier this year, the inevitable became more and more evident. The decline of condition had set in, and in a 15-year-old lioness it is something that is almost irreversible. It had affected both lionesses in the same way. One of the old matriarchs passed away early June in Londolozi. Her sister returned with the family to Singita without her, and it was a big question how long the mother of cub number 10 could hold on. Only 2 weeks after her sister had passed, the queen lay down to join her. These 2 legendary queens were the last direct descendants of the great Mapogo. They had gone through huge success and devastating losses. They were able to raise 9 of 9 cubs to independence with a strong coalition on their side. Sadly, the same outcome couldn't be achieved for the Mhangeni 12, but 2 of them made it to adulthood, passing on their mother's strength and courage to the next generation. The 4 original Mhangeni lionesses left behind a great legacy that dominates the central and western part of Sabi Sand, and their descendants will rule for many years to come.